From Lagos, the nation's commercial capital, this is the News at 10. Live from Channels Television. Reporting tonight, Gimba Umar.
Hello and welcome. Panic in Chibok local government area of Borno State as Boko Haram terrorists attack Korungilum community, burning down houses and residents scamper to safety. President Muhammadu Buhari restates commitment to rescuing children and other Nigerians still in custody of Boko Haram insurgents on the eve of Dapchi abduction anniversary. Federal government steps up surveillance at airports to prevent importation of coronavirus, intensifies screening at major entry points in the country. And Chinese health officials publish first details of more than 44,000 cases of COVID-19 in the biggest studies since the outbreak of the virus. Plus, business, sports, and news from Abuja, the FCT, and later international news from our London studios.
On business news tonight, Nigeria's headline inflation soars above 12%, the first time in nearly 2 years.
And on sports news tonight, Tottenham Hotspur suffer a huge setback after South Korea forward Son is ruled out of the rest of the season due to a broken arm.
And from Abuja, armed bandits kill Assistant Director attached to State House in Abuja, Letitia Nankang Dangan, in her apartment.
There is panic in Korungilum, a community about 30 kilometers from the popular Chibok town in Chibok local government area of Borno State. There are reports of ongoing deadly attacks there by suspected Boko Haram insurgents. Channels Television gathered that the insurgents gained entrance into Korungilum around 6 p.m., shooting sporadically and setting many houses on fire. The residents also confirmed that the insurgents drove into the town through Forfor area, forcing many of them to scamper to safety. The military is said to be engaging them in a gun battle as officers and men from the 28th Task Force Brigade and 117 Battalion in Chibok are currently handling the situation. In the year 2014, Chibok had gained international prominence following the abduction of 276 girls from their hostel in Government Secondary School, Chibok. Although some of the girls have been released, over 100 of them remain in captivity. The incident sparked global outrage, with international rights groups and world leaders rising, of course, to condemn the action of the terrorists. The incident also gave rise to a social media hashtag, Bring Back Our Girls, and another vocal group now known as the Bring Back Our Girls movement. We'll, of course, furnish you with updates on this latest attacks on another Chibok community as soon as we get them. And with that trembling story from Borno State, the president is still reassuring everyone that he remains committed to his promise to seeking and securing the release of all children and everyone still held captive by the terrorists. President Muhammadu Buhari made the promise today, which is the eve of the second anniversary of the abduction of the Dapchi schoolgirls, another major attack by the insurgents, by the way, which happened in 2018. The president reflects on how 110 girls were kidnapped by terrorists from their hostels against their will. 107 of them survived the ordeal, except for Leah Sharibu, who was denied freedom over her refusal to renounce her Christian faith. The president says that no one has the right to force any individual to change their faith against their will, and that all life is sacred. His statement reads, in part, as we redouble our efforts for Leah Sharibu, we can never allow terrorists to divide us. Christians against Muslims, Muslims against Christians. We are all sons of Abraham, and all Nigerians have the same worth and rights before the law and before God. He explains that his government has not relented its efforts to secure the release of the captives, regardless of their creed or the name of their creator. And the residents of Dapchi community in Yobe State are not giving up on the return of Leah Sharibu. That's her picture there. The federal government says that it is expediting actions, negotiating for her release. They also want the president to take up new measures that will end the security challenges in the country. The report.
February the 19th, 2018. An unfortunate day in the history of Dapchi community in Yobe State. It's a day when 111 students of Government Girls Science Technical College Dapchi and 2 other non-students were abducted by Boko Haram insurgents. 5 of them reportedly died owing to trauma. Others were returned by the insurgents, except for Leah Sharibu, who was held back for refusing to renounce her Christian faith.
So far, a total of 107 persons, comprising 105 Dapchi schoolgirls and 2 non-students, have been released by the insurgents.
2 years after, the city still waits for the news of the release of Leah.
We are calling and appealing, like always as a civil society activist, for government to do everything possible to ensure the release of all in captivity, especially our daughter Leah Sharibu.
We have been pleading with the federal government and security agencies to do something quickly in order to return this girl back and the other girls that were in captivity since before Leah Sharibu's case.
At the Government Girls Technical College Dapchi, few students and dilapidated structures indicate little or no attention being paid to giving the school a facelift. Although there are reports that Leah is married to a Boko Haram commander and has even become a mother, the residents are calling on the authorities to do whatever they can to secure her release.
We just wanted to see Leah alive. Either she has many children or how many she delivered, how many either with Boko Haram or whatsoever person.
When Channels Television visited the community, the residence of the Sharibus was under lock and key. According to residents, after waiting so long for the release of their daughter, Leah's parents finally returned to their home state, Adamawa, having spent 20 years in Dapchi.
I am pleading to the Mr. President, Federal Republic of Nigeria, President Muhammadu Buhari, to fulfill his promise, because he has promised the family, promised the nation, and promised the whole world that his administration should do their possible best to see that my daughter returns home safely.
As the family awaits Leah's return, the news of her release will definitely gladden their hearts, the community, and the nation at large.
Staying with security matters, but this time in the National Assembly, where the President of the Senate, Ahmed Lawal, is asking security officials to beef up security measures at the nation's National Assembly to avert any threat. Mr. Lawal made the comments today during a meeting with top security officials at the National Assembly complex in Abuja. He says that he has received reports of security threats to the Assembly. Those at the meeting include the Director General of the Department of State Services, the DSS, and representatives of the Ministry of Defense, Police, Civil Defense, Fire Service, and other security agencies.
Has come for this National Assembly to be properly secured. Those who work here directly with us, the security agencies, know what we are talking about. From the gate, people who shouldn't be here at all find themselves in, moving from one office to another looking for nothing. In fact, last week, there were so many newspaper reports, and I'm sure some of you would have read about that. Personally, from the DSS, I had a report that we had a security threat. Maybe we should look at the system we operated previously, of members of the National Assembly signing forms with the names of their visitors. I don't know if we could change it, but it used to be like that. And any security person who is given the job to ensure compliance and is found involved will not hesitate to get that person prosecuted.
Another threat to life that the federal government is paying very keen attention to is the need to ensure that the coronavirus does not find its way into Nigeria. That perhaps explains why the federal government is not leaving anything to chance as it steps up surveillance at the Nnamdi Azikiwe International Airport in Abuja. A federal government delegation led by the Minister of Information, Mr. Lai Mohammed, visited the airport today, after which they gave the assurance that screening and adequate surveillance is already ongoing at the major entry points in the country to curtail the spread of the disease in any case.
One after the other, passengers file up to be screened by port health officials. This screening is part of the renewed efforts by the government to prevent the importation of the dreaded coronavirus into the country. Reports from the Chinese Health Ministry says the virus has killed over 1,868 people in China. Some ministers are on hand to see things for themselves. But first, they make a stop at the hand sanitizer dispenser to clean up their hands. And they take turns to speak on government's efforts to prevent importing the virus into the country.
The airport public health emergency contingency plan, which we have, is designed to prevent, detect, and respond to any infectious disease outbreak that may be associated with air travel. Has been activated currently.
The federal government merely put together an interministerial committee and a task force to ensure that passengers coming to Nigeria or going out of Nigeria are adequately checked and ensure that if there's any instance or suspicion of being infected with the virus, that adequate measure will be taken.
After the meeting, the Minister of Health speaks on the existence of isolation centers at major entry points.
Isolation centers. We have here in Abuja as well. And of course we have in Port Harcourt, we have in Kano.
The lack of screening facilities at the various entry points in 2014 made it possible for Ebola to get into the country. Hence, the need for the government to take these preventive measures very seriously to avoid a repeat of the Ebola experience.
Meanwhile, the presidency has broken its silence on the increasing demands for the sack of the service chiefs, and they have an explanation on why none of them can be removed, at least not for now. The Secretary to the Government of the Federation, Mr. Boss Mustafa, explains that Nigeria is in a difficult situation and a synergy is needed within the intelligence community to address the insecurity. He insists that there are processes to be followed and they will be followed at the right time. Mr. Mustafa was speaking at an event in the nation's capital, Abuja.
You don't sack people like that. There are processes. And I believe that at the opportune time, those processes, if need be. But you just don't wake up and say sack people. It doesn't happen like that. We are in a very difficult time now. We need everybody to be on board. We need synergy within the intelligence community. We need synergy within the military formation so that we can fight this war. We are in a very difficult situation. And when we begin to create cracks and divisions, who will be the beneficiaries? The adversaries are the ones that will exploit those divisions and further the cost of destabilizing the nation. So I think at this moment, all we need is for everybody to be on the same page to fight a defined battle of securing this nation, protecting lives and properties, and ensuring that every Nigerian has the opportunity to live a prosperous life. I think that should be our main focus.
In part two, after the break, President Muhammadu Buhari gives assurance of transparent financial transactions by government as soon as the ongoing reforms of his administration are completed. Stay with us.